Okay. Thank you, Sheriff, and thank you everyone for being here tonight. I'm really happy you came out to spend the evening with me, and I am very happy I get to be here and spend the evening with you. I've been in Washington, D.C. most of the year, but I absolutely love to come back to Georgia. So this is actually, believe me, I'm having more fun than you are, and so thank you so much for coming to be with me. And I would like to say, how many veterans do we have in the audience tonight? All right, we've got a lot. Thank you. Thank you so much for your service. Well, before I dive into too many things, I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize how lucky all of us are. And, you know, with Hurricane Helene, our district, Northwest Georgia, was going to be in direct path of that hurricane. All the models had the hurricane coming straight through Northwest Georgia. And, you know, we are very lucky. We are very blessed that we aren't going through what our friends and neighbors and family and fellow Americans are going through right now in South, Central, East Georgia, Eastern Tennessee, Western North Carolina, and parts of South Carolina. And while we are blessed that we aren't going through what they're going through, at the same time, I know all of us are praying for them and doing anything we can in our power to help these people. So we must recognize that what we're seeing in Western North Carolina with our mountains over here, that could be us. And I'm so thankful that it's not at the same time while, you know, grieving for what they're going through. Just to give you a little update on Hurricane Helene, in the state of Georgia, there's been 25 casualties. There's over 300 boil water advisories still going on. 2,500 Georgia National Guard have been called up to help these victims. There's hundreds of thousands of people still without power. And our great linemen, those are our heroes. They're working hard to restore power for them. Many first responders are helping out, and so we're so grateful to those people. There have been 41 counties in the state of Georgia that have been approved for recovery by FEMA, and I had signed a bipartisan letter urging that to happen. However, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about our government response. I'm going to say it's been more than lacking. So, you know, we can go ahead and pull up the first slide back there, Alec. So, Vice President Kamala Harris announced that $750 will go to victims of Hurricane Helene. $750. You can go to the next slide. FEMA has spent over $1 billion to house illegal aliens in the past 2 years. Over $1 billion. That money is allocated by Congress to be spent on situations and disasters with what we are seeing people go through, Americans go through with Hurricane Helene. You can go to the next one. Here's something you probably don't know. Our United States government gives $1 billion every single month to the country of Ukraine to pay for their government. That doesn't go to the war. That doesn't go to anything else. That pays for their government to pay their government officials, keep the lights on in their government buildings, pay their salaries and more. That's your tax dollars that get sent over there. Okay, Alec. Now, our United States government also sent, as you can see, billions of dollars, $24.4 billion to Ukraine, $11.3 to Israel, $1.9 billion to Ethiopia, $1.6 billion to Jordan, $1.4 billion to Egypt, $1.1 billion to Afghanistan, $1.1 billion to Somalia, $1 billion to Yemen, $987 million to the Congo, $896 million to Syria, and $9,000 per illegal alien that has entered the United States of America, and Hurricane Helene victims get $750. So that's the response from the federal government with your hard-earned tax dollars. I'm going to tell you right now, I find it appalling and disgusting and shameful, absolutely shameful. I'd also like it to take just a minute to recognize our friend and ally in the Middle East, Israel, and what they're going through right now. It's very important that we're watching this closely, and I can urge you that myself and many other members of Congress that I know are watching closely what's happening in Israel. We'll continue to monitor that situation. It's extremely important for us to do so. Now, there are some people here that I need to recognize, and they're all the way back there in the back row. Ladies, wave your hands so everybody knows where you are. Those are my superstars in constituent services. So my favorite part of the job that I have that you all hired me to do is we provide customer service for you. And these ladies back here work tirelessly in our district office in Dalton, and I'm so proud of them and so thankful to them. What they can do for you if you are here tonight and you need help with anything, if it's your passport you need help with, if it happens to be veteran services or affairs, that's something that we do a lot and we love to do it. If you need help with the IRS, sorry, I can't take away your taxes completely, but we can try to help you with it. But if you need any help from any of the agencies or departments in the government, these ladies back here, they're superstars, and they're here tonight to be here for you. So if you have an issue, you can walk straight to the back and start talking with them, and we can open a case and try to help you out with any problem you have. So I'm so thankful. Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for doing such great work. Yes, they're great. Now, I planned these town halls this week, and I thought, you know, I can stand up here and talk to great folks in the district, constituents and people that live here, and I could just tell you a bunch of things. But I thought it would be better, especially since we're able to have this great theater here with a big screen, that I could show you some of the work I do in Washington, D.C. I serve on 3 committees. I serve on the COVID Select Committee, I serve on the Oversight Committee, and I serve on the Homeland Security Committee. And on our committees, we hold a lot of hearings. We hold hearings and we have witnesses come in. We talk to them, we question them. We also produce legislation through our committees. And so my staff has picked out some video clips that I can show you from these hearings, and then I can talk to you about them. I had a whole lot more I wanted to show you, and they said, Marjorie, we can't produce a movie tonight, but we can show you some clips. So, Alec, we'll go ahead and start with the first one.
Mr. Cuomo, let's talk about a tweet that you made, because there's an indictment out on a woman named Linda Sun. Linda Sun, and I'll read this indictment. It says on April 4th, politician number one publicly thanked PRC official number one, both in public remarks and in a post on Twitter, that's this right here, for helping arrange the donation, which was scheduled to arrive at JFK Airport in Queens, New York that day. So, Mr. Cuomo, you were thanking China, the PRC, while you had a woman named Linda Sun working for you, who has now been identified as a Chinese spy. Now, today you have come before the American people in our committee. You have insulted many people, including people in this room and people watching this hearing who lost their loved ones because of your March 25th directive. And at the same time, You were thanking the Chinese government while you had a Chinese spy working for you. So, Mr. Cuomo, I've read a lot about you, including the fact that 13 women that work for you accused you of sexually inappropriate behavior, which, thanks to the Democrat DOJ, helped you out of that. But I'd like to say this, and I'll ask you, are you either the dumbest tool of the Chinese government, or did you know for a fact that you were being used by the Chinese spy that was working for you?
I've read a lot about you too, Congresswoman. I think this is a very serious matter. About
it is
the
serious. That's right.
Matter. She was a junior member in my team. I wouldn't recognize her if she was in this room today. But I think it is a serious matter. I don't think this was just in New York. I think there is an infiltration of Chinese, maybe Russian operatives.
The Democrat Party's definitely had a problem with Chinese spies. Yes, you're right. And I want to remind you, you're under oath.
Yeah. And I think it's a serious issue, and I think the federal government and the state government should work together on it. The state government doesn't really have the ability to do the international reconnaissance, but the federal government does, and I think they should work together to make sure they're doing the best they can to do the vetting.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter the indictment for the record.
So ordered.
Thank you.
I now recognize Dr.
That's the former governor of New York. Now, let us never forget what happened to our country during COVID-19. This is a time where literally the government shut down private businesses, shut down schools, took away your First Amendment, your freedom of speech, your freedom of religion. They closed parks, they closed beaches. They forced you to wear masks that didn't work, by the way, did not stop the spread of COVID. And then they forced you to take a vaccine that had been experimental, and they rushed it through and approved it. And me either, by the way. I didn't take the vaccine either, and I didn't wear the mask either. On the House floor, Nancy Pelosi fined me over $100,000 in fines every day I didn't wear a mask. But I did that proudly because I believed people needed to be able to stand up. And you can't stand up and fight for your rights if you don't see members of Congress like myself doing the same thing. And that was extremely important to do. Thank you. But Governor Cuomo sat in there in front of our oversight committee. And when I said there were people in that room who had lost loved ones due to his directive, he had a directive that put COVID-19 patients inside nursing homes. And thousands and thousands of people died. Thousands and thousands of mothers, fathers, people's grandparents, great-grandparents died as a result of that. And one of the people sitting in the room was, if you watch Fox News, you know who Janice Dean is that does the weather. Her and her husband were sitting on the row right behind him. And they each lost their mother and father in the nursing home as a result of his directive, and they cannot stand that man. And it was so important to call him out because what I was talking to him about it was an indictment, and he's listed in it. He's politician number one. And I was pointing that out because it wasn't public at the time. And he had a Chinese communist spy working for him. He said she was a junior staff. No, she was a senior staff. And I said he was the dumbest tool. I think he was. Because he was spreading Chinese propaganda from the office of the governor of New York and on his official Twitter account. They were buying supplies from China, where COVID-19 came from Wuhan, and also having things donated to them. He wronged the people of New York so greatly, wronged them so greatly, and he should be prosecuted for that. He definitely should be prosecuted. I'd like to show you another short clip. This is a much shorter clip from the COVID Select Committee, talking to a man who definitely should be prosecuted.
You know that what this committee should be doing? We should be recommending you to be prosecuted. We should be writing a criminal referral because you should be prosecuted for crimes against humanity. You belong in prison, Dr. Fauci.
Mr. Chairman, I have a...
So on your behalf, I got to question and speak to Dr. Fauci, and on your behalf, I feel like I delivered the right message. He should be prosecuted for crimes against humanity.
Where does that stand?
Well, we have an administration that will not prosecute anyone. We have the Biden-Harris administration. And to understand it, whoever sits in the White House, whatever administration is there, they control all the federal government agencies and departments. So Joe Biden and Kamala Harris control the Department of Justice. They control the FBI. They control every single agency and department. So there are no prosecutions of people that they absolutely support. And the Democrats support Dr. Fauci. The Democrats were the party of shutdowns, and the Democrats are the party of forcing vaccines. So that's where that happens to stand. I'd like to move on, talking about vaccines. I've got one more clip I'd like to show you from the COVID Select Committee. Alec, we can go ahead.
Nothing creates vaccine hesitancy like ignoring people when they're reporting problems with vaccines that they're being mandated and forced to take. Vaccines that they have to take in order to keep their job. Vaccines that they have to take in order to be able to go to restaurants, go into stores, go into public places. Vaccines the doctors are telling them to take, but yet when they're screaming from the rooftops, something's wrong with the vaccines, I'm telling you, that creates vaccine hesitancy. The other problem is when you get censored on the internet or you get permanently banned on social media, when you were a victim of a vaccine injury or a doctor trying to report what you were seeing in your patients from vaccines. This chart right here, this represents vaccine reports from all vaccines since 1990. 34 years. This represents reports on the COVID-19 vaccines since December of 2020, less than 4 years. Something's wrong with the vaccines. And just because people are walking around and they've been vaccinated and they're not reporting a problem doesn't mean other people aren't having problems. And this has been virtually ignored. So much so, not only has it been ignored, it's also been censored and banned and labeled misinformation. This was a coordinated effort with the White House, the Surgeon General, the CDC, the Department of Homeland Security, CISA, Stanford, and the Virility Project. As a matter of fact, real people with real problems got censored, such as Maggie Dade. Maggie was a young child who developed severe symptoms and is still has a feeding tube today. She's a very sick child. That happened from the COVID vaccine. But her mother was taken off of the internet when she tried to report the problem. Can you imagine trying to report a problem with your child who's having a real vaccine injury, but yet social media takes you off? And the White House says it's okay, and Department of Homeland Security says it okay, and they label it misinformation? We can talk about funding these government programs and throwing more money at these government programs, but that isn't going to change the fact that vaccines should have never been forced on all these people to begin with. And if we want to talk about diseases like measles being transmitted among Americans, then perhaps we should talk about border security and stopping people who are unvaccinated from coming across our border and allowed to come into our country and then supporting them with taxpayer funds. I think that's a serious issue.
I think I'm the only unvaccinated person on the COVID Select Committee. So when you see me saying this, I want you to know I'm sitting in a room with most everyone that disagrees with me. It's tough to do that, but I think it's the most important thing I can do on your behalf as your representative is to be in that room where it's uncomfortable to say those things and say it to their faces. Because that's what people say, not in the government. That's what regular people say, and it's extremely important. I introduced a bill, and if my bill would pass and be signed into law, it would take away the protection of pharmaceutical companies so that people could sue them who are injured from vaccines. Vaccines should always be a choice. It should be a choice for anyone. If you want a flu vaccine, you should be able to go get it, but you shouldn't be forced. If you want a COVID vaccine, you should be able to go get it and not be forced. No one should have been forced to take a vaccine in order to keep their job, in order to be able to provide food and shelter for their families, and in many cities and states, in order to be able to go out in public, especially during those COVID shutdowns. It was wrong at the time. It's wrong now, and we must never forget it. Never, ever forget it. They stole your medical freedom. They stole your ability to take ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. They stole people's abilities to do that, and they tried to stop doctors and nurses who were trying to do the right thing. And we have to remember it, because if this ever happens again, America cannot allow that to happen to us. We have to fight for our freedoms. Now, I serve on the Oversight Committee, and oh my goodness, I could show you guys video clips from that committee all day long. We talk about everything from all types of government waste, fraud, and abuse, and even sometimes we talk about people's gigantic eyelashes. But my staff said I can't show you guys all my video clips, and they said we can't do a movie. So I do get to show you some, and this one is important. This is me talking to a U.S. attorney that works in the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. And instead of prosecuting crime like he should be in Washington, D.C., because it's one of the most dangerous cities in our country, our nation's capital, he spends most of his time prosecuting election protesters that were at the Capitol on January 6th. So we can go ahead and play that video.
The time for weaponizing the Department of Justice needs to come to an end. And because you refuse to prosecute real criminals that are violating all the crimes here in Washington, D.C., and you want to talk about D.C. residents, they are victims of your abuse of power. And because of that, I am introducing articles of impeachment on you, Mr. Graves, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
Matthew Graves has hunted down and not prosecuted, persecuted nearly 2,000 people, 2,000 Americans. Now, I'm not going to defend people that committed violent acts on January 6th, but I'm talking about non-violent election protesters on January 6th of 2021. Listen, that happened less than 6 months after the entire summer of 2020, where we watched night after night BLM rioters and Antifa burn, loot, attack police officers. They destroyed communities. They destroyed businesses. They attacked federal buildings. They attacked courthouses. They burned over 93 police vehicles. They attacked police officers every single night, and police officers had thousands and thousands of injuries. This wasn't one day in America's history. This was the entire summer and was labeled the summer of love. So the Democrats in Washington, D.C. can spare me when they talk about January 6th being the worst day in Americans' history. It was not. It absolutely was not. And Americans have the right to protest an election. All of you own the elections, and don't ever let anyone tell you you do not. You own the elections. They're yours. You pay for them with your tax dollars, And the outcomes of the elections of the people that you vote for determines the country that you live in. And I think you all know it based on the past 4 years. You know what the outcome of that election did to our country. We are living through this nightmare.
What's the plan if they cheat again?
Now, we'll get to the, hold your questions, okay? hold your questions. Let me get through. We'll do questions at the end. So here's something else you need to know. I introduced a bill. It's called the Matthew Lawrence Perna Act of 2024. And Matthew Perna was a nonviolent January 6th defendant. He never assaulted anyone. He never caused a single ounce of damage to the Capitol. He didn't attack anybody. He showed up. He was peacefully protesting the election. He walked in the Capitol through open doors, and then he walked around in there, and he walked back out through open doors. But because of the full weight and the power of a weaponized Department of Justice on Matthew Perna, as he was being prosecuted by Matthew Graves, and he was looking at having to be forced to be in prison for years, because these harsh Democrat-controlled courtrooms are putting these people in jail for years. He committed suicide because he could not bear it any longer. He killed himself. This is an American that didn't hurt anybody. He just said, stop the steal. He said, Trump won. And he committed suicide because he could not take what it was doing to him. Poor Matthew Perna and his family. And so his family suffers today, and they tragically mourn his loss. And I introduced a bill in his name to allow for, and this could help anybody. This could help any protester on any situation where they are being harshly prosecuted. But it would prohibit the detention of nonviolent political protesters. That way they're not being detained before they're ever even found guilty of anything. Gives them a fair and speedy trial. Isn't that what we deserve in America? Limits government surveillance and investigation. Consistent sentencing guidelines. Hey, listen, over 95% of those BLM rioters and Antifa rioters that got arrested, over 95% of them had their charges dropped. None of the January 6th defendants ever have their charges dropped. They don't get that same treatment. It should be consistent across the board. I can't get Republicans to help me on this bill. And I think that is one of the worst tragedies that's happening. And not enough people talk about it, but I talk about it all the time because I want you all to know. It's important to understand that these people, and many of them had never even been to Washington, D.C. before. They didn't know they weren't supposed to walk in through open doors in the Capitol. They didn't know they were doing anything wrong. I've met with grandmothers. I've met with veterans. I have talked to their family members, and they are actually being persecuted by the Department of Justice. It's not just them. The Biden-Harris Department of Justice has also put pro-life protesters in prison, not just for a few months. We're talking 6 to 11 years because they prayed and protested at abortion clinics. This is how severe the Biden-Harris Department of Justice is, and it's completely and totally wrong. So I had introduced those articles of impeachment right to Matthew Graves' face. The only thing I regret is that video doesn't show you the look on his face when I did that. Okay, thank you. I also had the delightful experience of trying to talk to someone on the Oversight Committee. The president's son, Hunter Biden. We can go ahead and play that.
Ms. Greene from Georgia for 5 minutes.
Thanh you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me, Hunter. Apparently, you're afraid of my words.
Whoa! Oh.
I'd like to reclaim my time, Mr. Chairman.
Kind of burst their bubble. Wow, that's too bad.
I think it's clear and obvious for everyone watching this hearing today that Hunter Biden is terrified of strong conservative Republican women because he can't even face my words as I was about to speak to him. What a coward.
You know what's wrong with him? He didn't have a good Southern mama, did he? He just wasn't raised right and continues to get away with everything. So we have investigated the Biden crime family on the Oversight Committee, and it's appalling and shocking what we uncovered in this investigation. This is a family that did business all over the world in countless countries, and they did that because Joe Biden literally was their product they were selling. Joe Biden's influence, his power, and his Rolodex. So if you think about it, Joe Biden, and I'm 50 years old, he served in office longer than I've been alive. That is quite the political career. He was not only a senator for decades, he was also vice president of the United States for 8 years. Now you can imagine how many people he knows and has met, and he has their phone number and their email address. Those are a lot of connections, and Hunter Biden did a good job selling his daddy's connections. So we're gonna go with the next video clip.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joe Biden continues to lie to the American people about his role in his family's businesses. In 2020, he stood up on stage of a presidential debate and told the American people that his family didn't take any money from China. That was a lie. Not only was it a lie, he knew it was a lie. He knew it because he met with his son Hunter Biden's Chinese business associates. I want to talk about CEFC, which is the China Energy Fund Committee. Mr. Bobulinski, who is Chairman Yi?
Chairman Yi was the chairman of CEFC.
Thank you. Jim Biden told the FBI and IRS that Chairman Yi was the protege of Xi Jinping, the leader of China and the Chinese Communist Party. Mr. Bobulinski, Rob Walker told this committee that Joe Biden met Chairman Yi. Are you aware of that? Yes or no?
I am now. I wasn't at the time.
And Joe Biden also met with you, is that right?
Yes, he did. Twice.
Who is Director Zhang?
Director Zhang was the number 2 at CFC.
The executive director of CEFC, the number 2?
Yeah, he was the number 2 executive, but really the point person that I worked with and the Biden family worked with, and he's the individual that Hunter Biden was shaking down at the end of July 2017, demanding that they fund the $10 million. They ultimately sent $5, but $10 million directly to Hunter Biden's account, Owasco.
Thank you, Mr. Bobulinski. I want to show you a text message that Hunter Biden sent to you and his other business associates. I'm holding it right here. I'll read it to you. Hey, Tony, I have an idea. In light of the fact we are at an impasse of sorts, and both James' lawyers and my chairman gave an emphatic no, I think we should all meet in Romania. He's speaking about my chairman. When Hunter Biden came in for his deposition, he said that he was referring to Chairman Yi, and that the rest of your group referred to Zhang as a different chairman. Does this make any sense to you?
That's a lie. I never heard Director Zhang referenced as chairman, and I had direct communications with Director Zhang over WeChat, met him in Romania, met him in Moscow, met him around the world in New York, trying to develop this business, and he was never referred to as the chairman, first of all. Second of all, that makes absolutely no sense in the context of this message because we are discussing Oneida Holdings, LLC.
Thank you. So he was not the chairman, just to clarify. Yes,
correct.
Or no? Okay. So I want to show you another text. When he said his chairman, he was talking about his dad. This is from Rob Walker. It didn't seem to make much sense to Rob Walker either. So he said that when Hunter, he said this to you, when Hunter was talking about his chairman, he was talking about his dad. When Rob Walker came in to give his transcribed interview to the committee, he basically said, well, Hunter was high or confused or mad. And Rob Walker said that he was just trying to calm things down between you and Hunter. But that doesn't really answer the question about who Hunter Biden is talking about. Hunter Biden lied to this committee. So here, clearly, he says, Rob Walker's saying he's talking about his dad. So I want to be very clear. We've established that Zhang is not the chairman, obviously. Is that correct? Yes or no?
Correct.
Let me show you another message. This message doesn't call Zhang Chairman Zhang, does it? It just says the Chinese want to do business with the Bidens. As a matter of fact, it says, both coming to be my partner, to be partners with the Bidens, with an S. He, Zhang, is implied, has implied that the number one has made it clear and available to him. Who is the number one?
The number one is Xi Jinping.
Xi Jinping, the president of China? Yes or no? The leader of the Communist Party, the CCP?
Yes.
Is the number one.
Yes, that's the number one that Hunter was referencing in that message.
Now, let's be very clear. This was in 2017, but I would like to make it known for this committee that Joe Biden told the press in 2016, as a matter of fact, I quote, "Yeah, I am. I am going to run in 2020. He told the press in 2016 that he was running for president of the United States in 2020. So here is the Bidens doing business in China in 2017 when everybody knew he was planning to be president of the United States. Do you see that to be a serious problem, Mr. Bobulinski?
I do, and I wish this committee would thoroughly investigate it and focus on all the evidence that the SDNY has on CFC. They had FISA warrants, so they were recording conversations, and I wish they disclosed all that data and fact to this committee.
Thank you, Mr. Bobulinski. I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bobulinski. I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Bill.
Yeah. So just to recap, that was Tony Bobulinski, great American, very courageous to come forward and tell exactly the truth about the Biden family. Just to be clear, what we uncovered right there through Hunter Biden's own text messages with his business partners, Rob Walker, Tony Bobulinski, and others, is that his father, Joe Biden, was his chairman. That means they were in business together. And the number one was Xi Jinping, the president of the CCP, the president of the Communist Party of China. That is exactly what we exposed right there. And he had said, that was in 2017 when those text messages were. 2016, that was a Time magazine piece I held up. 2016, he told the press in Washington, D.C., yeah, I am. I'm running for president. This is something that no one can argue. The Democrats know it. Kamala Harris knows it. The Department of Justice knows it. The FBI knows it. The CIA knows it. Washington, the deep state, the entire conglomerate, they know it. Joe Biden is as corrupt as they come. And yes, his entire family, his brother, his son, they were all in business with our enemies, China, and many other countries, Romania, Ukraine, many other countries. They had dozens of LLCs and bank accounts where they shuffled money around, and they got paid by these foreign governments. The biggest mistake, well, there's many, but one of the biggest mistakes this Republican-controlled Congress made is they never impeached Joe Biden. I introduced articles of impeachment multiple times, but our Republicans in Congress should have impeached Joe Biden. We had all the evidence and a lot more than that, a lot more evidence than that, and it's shameful because there needed to be an example made of that type of extreme corruption and abuse of power. And the Biden family's going scot-free, and they have made tens of millions of dollars because of it, and it should never happen. And I'll tell you one more thing. I don't think it's just the Bidens. I think there's many people in Washington that have done things like this, and it's probably been going on for longer than we can even imagine on both sides of the aisle. And that is sickening. It's absolutely sickening. So those were a couple clips from the Oversight Committee. My goodness, we do a lot more. And that was just a few of the highlights I wanted to show you. Now, a very important committee that I serve on is the Homeland Security Committee. And this is the committee that is heartbreaking. We have many people come before our committee and talk to us. We have farmers and ranchers that live along the southern border and have to endure and witness and have all kinds of damage to their property happen to them repeatedly over and over every single day because of the legalized illegal invasion into America because of the Biden-Harris administration. We have people come before our committee, mothers, fathers, and family members who have lost their family members due to illegal alien crime, all types of crime. And one of the most horrific ones that I remember having before us is a mother who told the story of her daughter being raped and murdered. And the detail that I can't even imagine is that her daughter, while this was happening to her, while she was being raped and strangled, called her boyfriend's cell phone trying to get help, just trying to get help. And he didn't answer, and it wasn't his fault. But her death, all of it was recorded on his voicemail. And that's what is left behind for that young man and this girl's family. And then there's so many other things that we hear about. Fentanyl poisoning over and over and over again. And this is completely unavoidable because the fentanyl comes across the southern border. On average, 300 Americans die every single day or poisoned, murdered by fentanyl. That is like a big old jetliner filled with passengers crashing to the ground every single day. Can you imagine? If that started happening, if airplanes were falling out of the sky and 300 people were dying every day in airplane crashes, they would ground every airplane in this country. But they do nothing about the fentanyl coming across the southern border that is trafficked into our country by the cartels that comes across from China, the Biden family's business partners. It's outrageous. So when you guys see me on TV yelling at people, you know why. It's absurd what we are living through, what we are going through, and that our government is doing absolutely nothing about it. And it shouldn't be this way. Now, I had raised holy hell on this issue because I think it's extremely important. The basic job of the federal government outlined in the Constitution, and you veterans understand this, you guys know it all too well. Our federal government is supposed to defend the United States, all 50 states. Our federal government is supposed to defend our states from invasion. They don't defend our states. They enable an invasion into our country, and it's killing Americans. And so we can play this last clip from the Homeland Security Committee. This is when we impeached Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. I thank the chairman. Madam Speaker, I rise in strong support of HRES 863, impeaching Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Alejandro Mayorkas is guilty of aiding and abetting the complete invasion of our country by criminals, gang members, terrorists, murderers, rapists, and over 10 million people from over 160 countries into American communities all across the United States. His willful refusal to secure the border has bankrupted communities, closed down U.S. schools that our children attend, drowned hospitals, and incapacitated law enforcement while empowering criminal cartels and illegal aliens. My Democrat colleagues argue that one cannot be impeached over policy differences. Well, I argue that breaking our laws is more than just policy differences. 300 dead Americans every day from fentanyl poisoning is more than just a policy difference, it's murder. Today in my own office, narcotics law enforcement officers from Georgia told me that 7 out of 10 Oxycontins or Percocets sold on the street are laced with fentanyl, and that comes directly across the border from Mexico.
Secretary Mayorkas has violated numerous provisions in the Immigration and Nationality Act, including unlawfully directing DHS to mass parole illegal aliens into the U.S. when federal law specifically prohibits this, and unlawfully implementing catch and release policies when federal law specifically mandates the detention and removal of inadmissible aliens. In fact, detention facilities under Mayorkas have been mostly vacant because of such unlawful policies. The largest detention facility in California, which can house almost 2,000 illegals, is currently housing only 6 illegal aliens. He has violated his oath of office and breached the public trust by willfully refusing to ensure the laws passed by Congress and signed into law by the President are faithfully executed as required by Article 2 of the Constitution. He has allowed over 10 million illegal border crossers to invade our country, approximately 2 million of whom are known gotaways. These are people who have completely evaded U.S. authorities and are roaming the interior of the American communities, assaulting, raping, and murdering Americans. And God help us if we have a terrorist attack on our land. His subversion of the law has resulted in the highest number of illegal alien encounters in a single day, in the highest number of illegal alien encounters in a single month, and the highest number of illegal alien encounters in a single year, surpassing every national record on each account.
Gentlewoman's time has expired.
I yield the lady an additional 15 seconds.
His willful refusal to enforce the law has resulted in the most egregious national security crisis in the history of our country. Democrats are in a quandary. Either they must own the policies of murder and crime of American citizens, or they can admit Secretary Mayorkas has broken federal laws and vote to impeach Secretary Mayorkas.
Of American citizens, or they can admit Secretary Mayorkas has broken federal laws and vote to impeach Secretary Mayorkas. And I'm proud to tell you the articles of impeachment that we passed in the House of Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, those were my articles of impeachment. And we passed those in the House. However, Chuck Schumer and the Democrat-controlled Senate refused to hold a trial. So they decided, the Democrats collectively and our border czar, Vice President Kamala Harris, decided to stand by their policies, the same policies that are killing Americans every single day and have brought over 12 million illegal aliens into our country over the past nearly 4 years, and over 2 million gotaways. These are people that Border Patrol never stopped. They never caught them. They never talked to them. They don't know their name. They don't know what country they're from. They don't know where they are, and they don't know what they are going to do in America. Over 2 million. Those are the policies, the so-called policies that the Democrats have chosen to stand by. And guess what? They want to give them all amnesty. They want to make them all citizens just like that. While Hurricane Helene victims get 750 measly stinking dollars, the Democrats want to hand over a free citizenship to people that broke in our country. And they're paying them right now to be here. It is, let me tell you what it is. I'll say it for you. It's treason. I believe it's treason. Now, while I've given you a bunch of bad news, I want to tell you a few good things. That would be unfair to just tell you nothing but bad news. It's not all bad news. There's been a lot of bills that I did vote on that I think are good ones. Now, we passed the SAVE Act that would require proof of citizenship in order to register to vote in federal elections. Yeah, we passed that on July 10th. I voted to provide $3 billion in critical funding for veterans benefits to ensure disability compensation, pensions, and other benefits for veterans. It's important. We passed tax relief for American Families and Workers Act to extend Trump's tax credits, expand the child tax credit, and deliver over $600 billion in relief for families and small businesses. I love small businesses. On the tax code issue, please tell everyone you know, this is extremely important. Our tax law, the current tax law we have, which is the Trump Tax Cuts and Savings Plans, it expires this year. In December, at the end of this year, the whole law will expire, okay? Now, whatever administration, whoever is in the White House after this election next year in January of 2025, and whatever party controls the House of Representatives, they will be in charge of writing the next tax code. And this is very important. You all need to know this. Democrats don't believe that we have a spending problem in Washington, D.C. They don't believe that's a problem. They think we have a revenue problem, and they want to raise taxes to solve their revenue problem so they can continue spending. And we're already over $35 trillion in debt with an interest that is compounding and compounding at a rate that is like a freight train out of control. So if Kamala Harris is in the White House and the Democrats are in control of the House of Representatives, you can expect your taxes to go up. If you have a small business, you can expect your taxes to go up. And here's something else you can understand. All that money that you saved your entire life and you want to hand down to your children or your grandchildren, you want to be able to pass on that very important generational wealth or a family farm or a business that you own. They are going to increase the death tax to a point where they will wipe out generational wealth. You need to understand that. People need to spread the word. That's extremely important. If we control Congress and President Trump is back in the White House, we are going to cut taxes. There will be no taxes on Social Security checks, no tax on tips. We are going to wipe out a lot of the tax base because we want Americans to have more money in their pockets, and we want to do everything we can to grow the economy. And that is what our plan is. So it's important for you all to know that, and it's important for you to share that with everyone you know. Tax code expires this year. Also, I voted to require the same Secret Service standards in determining the number of agents to protect presidents, like the one we have now, even though he's never in the White House, vice president, and major presidential and vice presidential candidates like President Trump and J.D. Vance. They deserve the same Secret Service protection because twice now Democrats have tried to kill President Trump, and we cannot allow it. I also introduced the Benny Thompson censure resolution because Congressman Benny Thompson from Mississippi introduced a bill to take away President Trump's Secret Service protection. So when you hear people like me say Democrats are trying to kill President Trump, yeah, they're literally trying to kill President Trump, and that should not happen. There should be no political violence. It needs to stop. I also voted to require DHS to detain illegal aliens who assault police officers and other first responders. I voted to deport illegal aliens who commit domestic violence and sex offenses. I voted to prohibit funding for sanctuary cities. We shouldn't have sanctuary cities. I also voted to protect against the U.S. and stop it from entering the World Health Organization Pandemic Preparedness Treaty. I voted to protect babies who survive botched abortions. We should always protect the unborn. They're the most innocent of us. We voted to pass H.R. 1, the strongest energy reform bills. Listen, if we get back in control, we are going to drill, baby drill, and we are going to protect America's oil and gas. We passed H.R. 2, the strongest border security package, and we will secure the border. That's what we really want to do. And we passed, this one's important, moms and dads and grandparents. We passed the Parents' Bill of Rights to allow parents access to their children's classroom and curriculums. We want you in charge. Very important. I could go on and on about all the bills that I've introduced and I've passed, but I think what I really want to do is I want to answer your questions, and I've got a fishbowl up here and my staff's telling me to get to the questions. So I'll go ahead and start.
Is there a bill to move the United Nations 50 miles east?
Or we could just worry about defending our country, right? Is there a game plan for all the illegals that are being registered to vote? None of that. Okay, I will tell you this. I don't think enough is being done about that. I think that's extremely serious, whoever asked this question. There needs to be more done. We should have no non-citizens voting in our elections. Democrats want non-citizens to vote in our elections. As a matter of fact, Democrats in Washington, D.C. tried to pass a law to allow non-citizens to vote in Washington, D.C. elections. Can you imagine that? The Secretary of State, and take this for what it's worth, their office told me, and I take it with a grain of salt, their office told me that they're doing an audit right now of Georgia's voter rolls to remove all non-citizens. That's what they told me this week, so I hope they get that done, and they said they would by election time. Yeah, they need to. I'll believe it after the election. Would you ever be vocal for a fight for former felons who have changed their lives around to get their right to vote back? Yeah, I think if they've changed their lives and served their time, I think that's a good thing. Ask how many people are registered to vote, and if not, do it tonight. October 7th is the last day. Okay, thank you for informing everyone of that. What can you tell us about the disaster relief? Well, we talked about that in the beginning. I hope that answered enough questions. Obviously, not enough is being done. There's many people still stranded. I am so impressed by the ordinary Americans that have stepped up to go and help these people. I heard a number today. I don't know how accurate this is, that basically 9 out of 10 helicopters that are going in are private helicopters, and that the federal government response is not. They're about 1 of the helicopters out of 10, and so I don't think enough is being done, and I think all of us are equally outraged about it. Remember, that could have been us. I appreciate you speak and your willingness to go against the grain, but I do wonder why you led the early effort to oust Speaker Mike Johnson. I've had that question a lot, and I think that most people now see what I saw back then. And I'm a person that I don't care how well someone gives a speech. I don't care how well they talk on television, how good they sound in their interviews, how good they might sound out on the campaign trail. Actions are what I care about. And that's what I judge someone's leadership by. And in the House of Representatives, the speaker vote is our vote. All of us are the ones that vote for our speaker. Unfortunately, the American people don't get to participate in that vote. I think if you all got to vote for Speaker of the House, it'd be an entirely different situation and a lot better situation, especially for conservatives. So I voted for Mike Johnson. I hired him. That's how I look at it. And when he basically went back on his promise to us, he promised us that he would pass 12 separate appropriation bills, and he didn't. And in May, he forced us to vote on a 2-part omnibus bill that we had 24 hours to read it, thousands of pages. We had no input of what was in the bill to those 2 bills. They were a package of 6 and 6. We're supposed to have 12 separate appropriation bills, and he put them together in 6 in one and 6 in another. Those are called minibuses. So we call it a 2-part omnibus. Those bills were so pleasing to the Democrats that Hakeem Jeffries had no problem with them. Chuck Schumer couldn't wait to get them over in the Senate. Chuck Schumer didn't change a word, didn't change a comma, not a period, nothing. Said, go ahead and pass them, Speaker Johnson. We can't wait to get them through the Senate. And I was furious over that That he forced all of us as Republicans in the Republican-controlled House to go back on our promise to you all that we would pass 12 separate appropriation bills. He also forced all of us to vote on things that we didn't want to vote on and that we didn't agree to, like abortion funding, like funding for transgender issues, transgender services for children. I'm very against that. I'm against abortion. I'm against the gender industry targeting children. And that was like the offense number one. He made us vote on those two things. People were furious. Then the following week, he reauthorized FISA, warrantless spying on Americans. And he was the final vote casting down an amendment that would have stopped warrantless spying on Americans. He voted that amendment down. That was offense number two. And then the third one, and I'm America first. I believe that your hard-earned tax dollars need to be here at home, solving our problems, working for our country, because God knows we have enough problems. But the third week, after he did the other two, he funded $60 billion to Ukraine. $60 billion to Ukraine. And that was it for me. That was it for me. So I filed a motion to vacate, and I was honored to have other really great Republicans like Thomas Massey, Warren Davidson, and others vote with me. These are serious Republicans, and they saw it too. And we showed you all, we didn't oust him out of his speakership, but we did show you all what the uniparty looks like when they all voted together to keep Mike Johnson, who was completely serving every single deep state issue in the Democrat Biden-Harris agenda. Now, again, remember, I voted for him to be speaker, and I wanted to fire him, and I think he does need to be fired for that. Problem is, I was way ahead of you guys, and you guys didn't see what I was seeing there on the inside. So that's where I stand with Speaker Johnson, and I really can tell you right now, because it's not just me that's upset with his leadership. He just passed another CR before we all came home, which guess what? That funded every single thing we hate happening right now. It was a kick the can down the road, continuing resolution that just continues funding the open invasion into our country, the weaponized Department of Justice that's prosecuting Donald Trump, prosecuting election protesters, and it goes on and on. So I don't think he'll be our speaker next Congress. I can't, I have no idea. I don't know what happened. Are you brave enough to sponsor a bill to make it illegal for any pharma company to advertise on TV? USA and New Zealand are the only two countries who allow this. I agree. I don't know why pharmaceutical companies are selling you their meds on television. I think the doctors and patients should be talking about that together. I don't know of any, I'll have to check and see if there are any bills already there on that issue, and there might be. What are the plans to stop giving U.S. Americans Social Security to immigrants who have never put in one penny? So here's something really interesting, and we can talk about the elections and Social Security. When they come across the border, they go through, oh, by the way, they come into our country using a beautiful handy dandy app that you all pay for called CBP One, CBP-ONE. You can look it up. If you have a smartphone, you can go to the App Store and you can look up CBP-One, ONE. So you can pull up this app and you can download it on your phone, but guess what? So can anyone else all over the world. And I know this is about Social Security, but I'll get to that in a second. So people across the world in 170 different countries download the app and they go, okay, now when do I want to come to America? So they go on there on their app and they enter their information and they say, oh, you know, it's going to be convenient for me to come in, and they pick a date, maybe 2 months from now. And they say, well, what port of entry do I want to go to? So they go on there and go, do I want to come in California and San Diego? Maybe. Oh, maybe I'll come in through El Paso, Texas. So they pick their port of entry. What time do I want to come into the United States? Well, I don't want to get up too early. Maybe 11 a.m. or 2 p.m. might be convenient for me. So they pick their time. So they pick a date, a time, and a port of entry. Then all they have to do is make their way to that port of entry on that date and on that time. And they are greeted very nicely by Border Patrol, because the Biden-Harris administration has turned Border Patrol into a welcoming committee into America. And they are led into the country and they go through ICE, where they're given a free cell phone. You guys are so generous giving out free cell phones to these people. And they're given a court date to come back and talk to a judge about how they want to stay in America. Only problem is the court date is not anytime soon. It's usually years in advance, 5 years or more. And so they get their paperwork. And then there's so many NGOs, non-governmental organizations and nonprofits that are funded by the federal government, your tax dollars, that help all these people. Or the government, our government, by the way, gives them bus tickets or airplane tickets to basically any lovely city or community or state across America, you know, places like Springfield, Ohio, or maybe even to Dade County in Georgia. But no, Sheriff Ray Cross will never let that happen. So they get to come into America. Now, here's the situation. When they have that paperwork, they're allowed to, they can register for a Social Security number. And with that Social Security number, then they can go and get a job. And then they go and look for employment here in America. There is no other country that you can go to that would let us do that. Can you imagine? And then to receive Social Security benefits that Americans have paid into to be paid to you when you retire, it's outrageous. But that is literally what's happening every single day. And a couple of weeks ago, I was talking with President Trump, and I told him, I said, do you know about the CBP One app? And I explained it to him. And I sent him the link, the CBP One app on the App Store. I sent him the link and sent it to members of his staff. And I'm so glad he's talking about it now. And you hear him talk about it a lot, because that's what they're doing. And yes, Social Security numbers. And here's how it goes with elections. When you register to vote, you can register with your driver's license, or you can register with your Social Security number. So this is a serious problem. Thankfully, I will say, out of all the swing states and the states that had problems during the 2020 election, I think out of all of them, like Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, those states never changed their laws because they have Democrat governors and Democrat state legislatures. Georgia is the only state out of all of those, we changed our laws. The state legislators, they changed the laws. So I am hoping and praying that we see good things in the state of Georgia. But you know what? They didn't do that in those other states. And I think it could be a serious problem. How could school security be improved? Guard these schools the same way that they guard politicians, the President of the United States, the Vice President. Guard them, diamonds, golds. Guard them with men with guns. Men with guns. How about veterans in here? I bet you guys would stand guard. Enough with the gun-free school zones. Okay, let's see. What policies will you enact to incentivize localites to build more housing? Okay, my son is 24 years old, and it seems the home ownership of the American dream is out of reach. I agree. So this is due to government spending. The inflation is out of control. Interest rates are high. Is another problem with that. And my kids are in their 20s too. So I totally relate to this. Young Americans today don't have hope of ever owning a home. Many of them think they're never going to get to own a home. Houses are so much more expensive today than they were when we were all in our 20s and starting out, and interest rates are high. The best way to make it easier for these young people, these young adults, to be able to afford even rent and be able to buy a home is we have to pull back on government spending. Congress should never pass a budget unless it's balanced, ever. And that would be the best thing that we could do. Have you considered the reason these evil leaders that we have over us today, both Republican and Democrat, are a result of the Almighty's punishment because we have turned from him? And if so, what needs to be done in your opinion? I consider this every day, and I'll say it like this. We've been murdering babies since 1973. It's been legal. Abortion has been legal in this country since Roe versus Wade in 1973. We have been murdering over 63 million people in the womb. It's no wonder that our nation feels like it is under judgment. And I say that as a Christian, and I think that's true. And politics is literally, in America today, is a fight between good and evil. And the line is clear. Thank you for that question. What is going on with the House and the Senate? Good Lord, who knows? Sorry. What are our chances? They're not good. No, sorry. What is going on with the rhinos? I have no idea. Okay, that's that. Sorry, I'm having fun with those questions. I don't understand it, you guys. I can't explain it. If somebody asked me, like, why do Democrats get so much done and Republicans can't do anything? Here's the answer. I think that's the best way to answer those questions. Democrats don't care how much money they spend. They do not care. So when Nancy Pelosi was Speaker, I watched her very closely. And this woman, you might not like her, but dadgummit, she's talented. And she's able to accomplish a lot. She got more done than anybody I've ever seen because she walked around with her paper and her pencil. And she walked around to every single one of her Democrat members, and she basically made a wish list. What do you want? And what do you want? And what do you want? And what do you need in your district? And what do you want to get accomplished? And that is easy for the Democrats to do because, number one, they don't care how much it costs. And number two, they have no moral boundaries. None. And this is the truth. And so they don't care how many people come across the border. They could care less. So if one of them's agenda was to just let everybody in and give them amnesty, she was fine with that. If another one of them's agenda was to make abortion legal up until the day of birth, and guess what? They passed that bill twice. They're fine with that. And then if another one's agenda is to target kids under 18 with puberty blockers and hormone treatments and mastectomies and castration before they're ever old enough to vote or even get a tattoo, they're fine with that because they have no moral boundaries. So Nancy Pelosi could make a big old wish list, could cost, and it did, trillions and trillions of dollars, and pass it on the House floor, and the Democrats join together and they all vote yes. That's how they get so much accomplished. Republicans, we have a conscience, and we also have morals. And for many of us, we're Christians and we believe in God. It's a good thing. So when you look at House Republicans, we're like a broad spectrum. We have, I'm fiscally conservative and I'm socially conservative. I don't want to spend your money out of control. I want to cut spending. I will not vote for abortion. I will not vote for a transgender surgeries in the military or God forbid, a transgender agenda on kids. I don't care what adults do. I don't want to know. It's none of my business. But when it comes to kids, I will fight on that issue all day long. So that's, yeah, leave the babies and the kids alone. So those are my issues. And then in fiscal conservatism and strong borders. It's not complicated. Democrats call that radical, but it's not complicated. Then you've got other Republicans that are much more moderate than me, and they'll vote for some of the things that the Democrats want to do. And then you got Republicans that are fine with funding whatever the lobbyists want or the special interest. And so we're a broad spectrum. So that's why you see Republicans, we're fighting it out because we don't believe in putting together one big gigantic wish list that has no moral boundaries. And I think that's the best way I can explain it. And I hope that makes sense because I'm sure from your perspective, you're like, what the heck is going on? Most of the time I'm in there and I'm going, what the heck is going on? Oh, I think we can win. I do. I tell you why, because we passed H.R. 1, bringing back American energy. We passed H.R. 2, the border security bill, strongest border security bill there is. We passed many amazing bills. We just need a president and the White House will sign them into law. And so I'm going to count on you guys to make that happen. We can do it. Is there any money we could get for our American Legion Post 106 here in Trenton? Alabama Post 39 got $5,000 from Tommy Tuberville. Yes, you guys, I don't know. Oh, Gary Moore. Okay, Gary, that's what my staff is here. You guys can talk to them and we can work on getting you some help for that. Where's Gavin at? Alec, where's Gavin?
He might be outside.
Can you text him and tell him to come back? Thank you. How can we stop sending money to Ukraine and use it for hurricane relief? Call Mike Johnson's office, Speaker Mike Johnson, and tell him to stop sending money to Ukraine and give it to hurricane victims. That would work. Do you support no tax on Social Security? Yes, absolutely, 100%. No tax on Social Security. That's your money. You've already paid taxes on it. How do we, actually, I go further on that. Social Security should not be in the general fund. It should be separate. They should have never put Social Security in the general fund because they robbed Peter to pay Paul, and they're stealing your money. How do we prevent voter fraud this time in Georgia? Well, we show up and we watch the polls and we volunteer and we hold our election offices accountable and we watch closely.
We don't have water breaks at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, we'll see if that happens again. And I proudly voted to object to Joe Biden's Electoral College votes in 2020. And I would do that again today, and I would do it again tomorrow. That was a stolen election. Everyone should comment. Follow MTG on social sites. She is so transparent. She regularly posts her activities and her positions on issues almost daily. She keeps her followers very well informed. Thank you, Kim K. Thank you, Kim. I appreciate that. I try. I would walk around. You know what? If I could, you guys, I would walk around with a GoPro on my head in Congress. I think you should see all of it. I wish I could do that. If Trump is elected, will he really give Kennedy the ability to clean house and work toward making America healthy again? I hope so. And I've heard a lot of plans about that. Yes, we really, I think RFK's got some great plans. I really agree with them. I actually met with farmers today. I had a farmers roundtable. We got to clean up our foods. We absolutely have to clean up our foods. And I have sponsored and co-sponsored legislation to do that. We got to get the chemicals out. We need to support our small farmers. Our farmers need the ability to basically sell their crops. They need the ability to be able to function without having the oppressive government regulations that are on them right now. And it's pretty tough for farmers. Oh, one more thing before I go. I got a few more. I forgot to mention the port strike. Thinking about farmers, that made me think of them. So concerned about our farmers in Georgia, you know, harvesting cotton, pecans, peanuts, many things are being harvested right now. And a lot of our farmers depend on the ability to export in order to make money for their entire year's harvest. And this port strike is serious. And not only is it hurting farmers, it's hurting many companies exporting, but it's hurting us on imports. And, you know, this is really the effect of America last policies for decades, that we're dependent on all these foreign countries for our own goods. And here's something that I think is a very startling statistic, at least it startled me. I was meeting with another group of farmers from Georgia a couple of weeks ago in Washington, and they told me that this year, 2024, for the first time in our nation's history, we are in a food trade deficit by $36 billion. $36 billion food trade deficit. We're to a point now where we import more food than we export. So we're dependent on foreign countries to eat. This is the most horrific thing, in my opinion, is because our food security is our national security. And this port strike, I don't know how long it's going to go on. Joe Biden has said he will not enact the Taft-Hartley Act. The Taft-Hartley Act would force an 80-day cooling off period so both of the sides could talk. But the port strike is serious, and I don't know how long it's going to last. We haven't been given any information about it. So I just wanted to, I figured that might be on some of your minds. Oh gosh, China should not be buying our farmland. That should be completely illegal. I know the state here in Georgia, they wouldn't do it in Congress. I can tell you that. We got too many China first members of Congress, sadly to say. But that here in the state legislature, in the House, they passed a bill to make it illegal for China to buy farmland. It's got to pass the Senate. So just so you know, it passed the House, it needs to pass in the Senate. So if you call your senators here in Georgia, ask them to pass that bill. I think it'd be great.
Severe Democrats.
What is the Republican plan to deport illegal immigrants? Day one, we're going to create the largest travel agency to deport these people out. Day one. And President Trump talks about that in every speech he gives. That'd be the best thing we can do. Hi, Marjorie. Is the Speaker of the House being blackmailed? Does anyone have a plan? Well, on the first question, I have no idea what's wrong with him. I can't even tell you. Does anyone have a plan to replace this guy? Yes, there are plans being made. And so thank you. Thank you. Keep charging. I like that. Keep charging. We will. Somebody needs to get TVA under control. The CEO is bringing home over $10 million per year. Wow, I'm in the wrong business. While we are struggling to pay our electric bills, and TVA is about to raise rates again. And they charge now 12 cents per kilowatt and only pay 1.01 cent per kilowatt for solar. I don't know. I'll definitely check into it. I know my power bill is really high. My goodness. I will definitely look into that. I don't know. I haven't looked at those rates, but I'll have my staff. We'll definitely look into that for you. All right. We got one more. You guys are great. Thank you for sticking around. This is fun. FEMA wants more money. 640 million illegals spent on illegals. I'm not giving them a damn penny, I can tell you. Will it be earmarked for hurricane victims? You know what? If they can write checks constantly to Ukraine, if they can write checks constantly, we don't have to give them any more money. They need to just get their asses in there and help Americans. Excuse my language. I'm sorry. This is beyond anything we've ever seen. And so I don't know what to say about it. Here's my problem. We have not been contacted by our Speaker of the House. None of it. Our Congress has not been contacted about this issue at all. You would think we would have had a conference call or something this week, but we haven't even had a conference call from the Speaker of the House. We learn things. This is ridiculous. I am learning things on television just the same way you're learning them. So I think what I'm going to tell you is working in the government, I have learned one thing. The government fails the American people over and over and over again. And I'll remind you that you are the people. And that is the government that you have the ability to support, and then also you have the ability to change it. And that right is given to us by our founding fathers. All I can do as your representative is go to Washington, D.C. with I'm not even 5'3", you guys. I'm under 5'3". But with every cell in my body, I can tell you, I pour out my heart and soul into trying to hold them accountable, voting to defend the things that I know we all believe in, our faith and our values and our morals, and trying to do the right thing. I mess up sometimes, but I try to do the right thing over and over again. And I thank you so much for sending me to be your representative, and I'll continue to fight for you guys up in Washington, D.C. So thank you so much. Thanks for being with me tonight. Yep, thank you.